Welcome you here. I know it's been a long day for you, so hopefully we can get through this, but I want you to feel free to ask any questions that you may have. I want to start off, this really doesn't have anything to do with the language, but I'd start off with a little attention getter, object lesson, or whatever. I'm going to pass my little box of rocks, polished rocks around, and you're welcome to take one. And I want to tell you why I love polished rocks. Well, I've always loved rocks. When I was growing up, you know, you go on your little hikes and you see the sparkly ones and the different shaped ones, and I love to pick up rocks. Well, my youngest son had the same like for rocks. And so one year for his birthday, I thought, I'm going to buy him a rock polisher. And we're going to have fun polishing all these rocks up. So got the rock polisher, and then I started opening it up to read the instructions. And it was like, okay, you get this grit and tumble your rocks in the rock polisher for so many weeks. Then after you do that, then you change it to another grit and polish them more and more. Another grit and polish them some more. And I'm going, oh my goodness, I thought it was like a 2-3 day process and I'd have to polish rocks. No. I thought, how am I going to keep my son's interest for weeks on these rocks? But anyway, then at the bottom of the instructions it said, don't get discouraged. Just think how long it took for these rocks to even form. And so I thought, okay, you put it that way. But my little lesson in that is as you look at your rock, I want you to think of your child or children and how each one of them is individually unique. And so as you try to help with this program, help the teachers, please keep in mind that your child is going to develop at their pace. There are some children that will come to kindergarten reading on a 3rd grade level. And then there will be other children who, are just getting the process down. And so you need to accept your child where they are and know that it's okay. That, like we've said up there, I don't know how many times it's been said, we each have our mission, we each have our individuality, and we each have the capacity to become like our Heavenly Father. And that's the most important thing to keep in mind. In any of this teaching, any of this learning that your child will do this, during their lifetime. And even our own, we have to keep that we are unique. We are individuals. And that's the most important thing. And the second thing to that is, I know the teachers who teach here. And I know they each feel that way. And they each love your child and are willing to help that child and help you. So please don't hesitate. If you ever have any questions, concerns, please don't hesitate to go to that teacher and say, these are my concerns, can you help me out? And we'll all work together for the benefit of your child. I make that promise to you. So that is my rock thing. So let's get to the language, and you're probably wondering, why do I have to come to a class and learn about spelling and reading and language? I don't know that my parent was required to do that. And how can it be so much different than the way I learned to read or the way I'm reading now? Well, Spalding is a little unique. And there are some different things that will probably help if I explain it to you so that you can help your child in their educational process. So, we are going to try, I have another little story. There was a hermit, and he lived, you know, out of society for years and years and years and years. And one day he decided to come into town. So he came into town, and he was fascinated with cars. And he thought, I want one of those. And so he bought a car. And the next day he was going down the road, feeling the leather seats in this brand new car, waving at people as he was going down the street. The only problem was the horses that were pulling his car couldn't quite keep up with the rest of the traffic. Because he didn't have the knowledge that he needed to know how to run that car. And so that's what Spalding has, the tools to teach your child. I'd like to say everything they know, but a lot what they know to be able to unlock reading, spelling, literature, all those things. And it is a very good program for that. And so that is our objective, to give you the tools. And part of the tools you have right in your hand, your phonogram cards. And not that we are going to expect you to be proficient. It would be good if you were, and if you have a few children coming along, you probably will get pretty proficient after the years and working with them. But they will be good reinforcements that you can use to help your child. So, let's get started. What is language? Have you ever thought of that? Language is a means by which we can express our thoughts and ideas to others. We can do this by verbally speaking or writing. And when a child is young, a baby is born, they don't speak, do they? The only thing they do is cry. But as they get a little older, I'm getting ahead of myself. As they get a little older, they will start making sounds. And pretty soon you hear the da-da, or the ma. And immediately the child will be reinforced with, woo, everybody's clapping. Did you hear that? They said da-da. They know my name. And that is kind of the beginning of their language development, their vocabulary. And then as they go along, the more they hear, their vocabulary develops. And let's go back to the foundation. Human beings are the only creation that has a verbal language. I mean, the other animals can communicate with each other, but they do not have a verbal language. Human beings are the only ones that have the verbal language. And Adam was commanded that he should record and teach his children to write and to speak. So we have an obligation to do the same thing for our children, to teach them that. This is one of my favorite quotes, the reading mother. You may have tangible wealth untold, caskets of jewels and coffers of gold. Richer than I, you can never be. I had a mother who read to me. And can I say that is a very, very important thing for you to do, is to read to your children, or listen to your children read to you. Even, it's especially important when your child's learning to read. I know in kindergarten we require 20 minutes a night of reading. And naturally, if your child isn't a reader, it will be 20 minutes of them listening to you. But the things you will teach your child in just opening a book, having them to look, the direction of the book, the, you know, who's the author, the cover, all these things they can learn, which will help them in their reading process. So it's a very important. And even, I know a lot of families, even when their children get older, they will have like, you know, reading times where the families, they'll choose a book as a family and their family will get together and, you know, they'll all read this book as a family. And you can do it any way you want, but it is very important to read. Your child learns how to have expression, fluency from that example. So one of the things that's important is to teach your child to read, is that. Okay, there's some other things that are important to prepare your child for reading, and it's called phonemic awareness. And that means that they can segment a word, they can tell you how many sounds are in that word, they can blend the sounds together, they can tell you the beginning sound, middle sound, or ending sounds. They can hear that. And rhyming is a very, very important phonetic skill. You know, if test your child out. I know we'll do that in kindergarten. Test your child out and see. Say two words that rhyme, and say, do those words rhyme? Or say two words that don't rhyme and say, do those two words rhyme? And sometimes if a person is struggling with rhyming, they will try to categorize the words. Like if you said boy and man, they'd go, yeah, they rhyme, you know, because they're putting it together that way. And they haven't got the concept of, no, rhyming begins with different sounds, but they end the same. And so can they hear the rhyme, and then can they produce a rhyme? So you say a word and say, tell me a word that rhymes with that. So those are some things you can do to help your child with writing. Syllables are important for a child to be able to break a word down. Especially, like in kindergarten, we begin with one syllable words. But then we go on to the two. In that, you know, first, second, third grade, they go up to multi-syllable words. And by then, a child should be able to hear each syllable and put the sounds together in each syllable so they're not seeing the whole word. They're able to break it down into syllables, which helps in their spelling. Because it isn't this great big word they have to learn how to spell. They can do it syllable by syllable. And like in kindergarten, sound by sound. And they'll say, I can't do this. Oh, yes, you can. Because you know the sounds. Let's go through that. So those are important things that we in kindergarten will make sure your child knows. And you who have older children who aren't in kindergarten, check those out. Okay, the English language is a sound symbol system. It means we have sounds and they have a symbol. Like this is the symbol. They will see that symbol. The sounds for this would be a, ah. And maybe in preschool or something, they taught the ah sound. They taught maybe the a and the a. Very seldom do they teach a, ah. But when you're, you know, learning how to ma, well, what does ma end with? A, ah, ma, or grandpa. So Spalding says, let's don't handicap them by only teaching one of the sounds and then waiting a while and teaching the other. Let's teach all the sounds that letter can make, and then there you have the tools. They have the tools to see a word and figure it out. Now there's other rules, like the silent E will make the A say A in made, and other rules that they will learn along the way. And that is another key thing about Spalding is they teach the rules. A lot of times, I know you've heard the English language is so, you know, broken or yes, or it doesn't have the rules that, you know, there are no rules to it is what people will say. You just have to learn how to spell and learn this. Well, I have learned differently with Spalding. There are rules. It's just we have not been taught those rules. And so your kindergarten child, or on up, will learn those rules. And so the English language will not be such a mystery to them. So we have the 26 letters, our alphabet, and of those 26 letters, they produce 42 sounds in different combinations. So we've got our 26 letters, which I said this one will produce 3 sounds. This one 2, k, s, d, only 1 sound, f, 1 sound, g, j, 2 sounds. And might I add here, when your child is saying these sounds or you're helping them say them, like a consonant sound, we say snip it off, cut it off. We don't want fa or ga, because you're really adding the on the end of it. You're really putting 2 sounds together. So it's just very simple. You know, don't allow them to say that. Because if they're allowed to say that, when we do get to spelling, and it's find, they can't go I, you know, it's just confusing. So, cut those off. So those combinations, and then we've got a lot of the combinations that will say A. This will say A, I will say A, Y will say A, EY will say A, so they learn that different combinations will say those. But when they learn all those phonograms, and that's why you have the phonogram cards to learn all these different combinations, they will say those sounds. So that when they hear that sound in the word, they will, or see it, to read it, they have some choices. They don't just have to memorize the whole word, that word says it. Does that make sense? Now, like I'm saying again, if you have any questions, please raise your hand. When we teach it, we do multisensory. So they've done studies on the brain. And if somebody is talking, then this part of your brain is using, if you hear it, that part, you know, if you're doing something, that part, you're seeing something, that part of the brain. Well, we want to light up the whole brain, not just a section of it. So when we teach, we're going to use all the senses. So they're going to see it, they're going to hear it, they're going to say it, and they are going to write it. All the same. We're not just going to flash cards. They're going to do all those things at once. So they've got their whole brain lit up. And we do it explicit. That means we aren't going to use A is for apple. We won't use keywords or pictures. We do not use the letter names. Now, it's not like we're going to not teach the letter names. The majority of students that come in really already know the letter names. But we will practice and refresh them, but we won't do it at the same time we are teaching the sounds of the letter. We will use the things up there, and I'll point and say, what's this letter name? And we'll separate the names from the sounds for now. because my favorite story is if I ask you, oh, you have a little dog, what's his name? Oh, Fluffy, his name's Fluffy. Okay, that's his name. But if I said, what does Fluffy sound like? You wouldn't say, Fluffy, Fluffy, Fluffy. You would say, ruff, 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 right? So when a child is spelling a word or reading a word, they're not saying the letter names. They're saying the sounds, except for naturally the vowels. But we'll say the names in words. But all the others, you're not saying C. If you saw that letter, you would never say C if you were trying to read a word, correct? And so that's why they don't use the letter names. That's why we separate those. And to begin with, we do not use the capital letters. We just teach all the small ones first. We will teach the capital letters. And usually they come quickly once the children know these sounds. They associate the sounds with them. We will, like I said, practice the letter names so they will know those. And so it comes very quickly to them. And yes?
My daughter likes to tell me to quiz her on spelling. Mom, give me a spelling word. And I was just learning this, that you're not supposed to use the letter names. So when I'm asking her how to spell tail, how does she spell it back to me if she's not using the letter? I mean, she could make the sounds oh, but that's not telling me that she knows how to spell it. So would I just have her write it?
Well, you could have it right, but she could also say A, because for tail, you would, well, I'm talking about dog's tail.
Yeah.
Then you would use the two-letter phonogram. A, O.
So that's how she would show that she knows how to spell it, by using her fingers?
A, O.
Okay.
Or she could write it. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So we aren't going to say, and I know this is so traditional, this is the way I did, let's practice spelling, spell the word cat, and I'd say, well, C-A-T. But like I said, that doesn't really that doesn't teach them what sounds, are used to spell that word. And that's what we're trying to do with them. I'm sure when they get into, the upper grades, they will probably use the letters to spell words. Because by then, they will have learned those things. But when they're beginning to spell words and read words, they will use the sounds. And we will use the sounds to teach them how to do it. And another important thing is the clock. If you look on your paper, you will see a chart like this with the strokes. We have the circle stroke, we have the short vertical line, the tall vertical line, which begins just below the top baseline. And some people say, well, why don't you just start at the top baseline and bring it down? But if you're writing on, think about it, if you're writing on notebook paper where there is no space between the one line and the next, what would happen if you wrote, for instance, the L started right up here and went all the way down, and then you went to your next line and you all of a sudden, H was right underneath, right in that place. You'd start there and it would just look like one big line that went through two lines. So if they're taught to leave that space, then when they're writing without a space, then, and if you watch when you write, you don't touch that top line. You've just learned that you don't touch the top line because then it would get real confusing in your writing. In kindergarten, and you may see a little difference. Okay, we used to do rigs. Rigs had the dotted line. And Spalding, when they first teach that, they don't use the dotted line. They just tell them, find the center thing. But when we've compared writings and things, to begin with, like in kindergarten, we have found that the dotted line gives them something more to to do their writing. And then you will be surprised if they will do that, and kindergarten teachers, parents, you'll be amazed at their writing. It will be neat and great. I mean, I have had some kindergarten students that, I put my writing down and they're writing and I'm going, they're doing great. I can't tell the difference. And it's been some boys sometimes too. So encourage, this is the thing, that you can help as parents, to encourage that writing. And like I said, it's multi-sensory, and if you will follow that, it will be an interlocking step in teaching them how to write cursive, which we still do here. They'll start learning cursive in the end of 2nd grade. So, I think it's your next page, on the back, it's your next page, are the letters. And that first row of letters, we will call the clock letters, because they will start at 2 on the clock. So I will begin, and in the spring orientation for the kindergarten students, we had them do that little clock. There was a reason why we had them do that little clock. So I told them, you go home and you play the game so that when you come back, you can close your eyes and I can say, put your finger on the 2 in the air, and they know that 2 is right over there. Because they're not going to have this clock with numbers on their paper. But they will know 2 on the clock is over there. It isn't down here, here, here. Oh yeah, I remember, it's right there. And so when they put their pencil on their paper, then they'll know 2 on the clock starts right there. And we go in a counterclockwise motion. So 2 on the clock, we round to the 10, curve to the 8, to the baseline, curve up to the 4, back to the 2. And they would have written or if we were just doing strokes, the circle. And then they start putting the vertical lines on. So to write an a-ah, they would start at the 2, they would go around the same way I told you, and they would go back to the 2, and they would not lift their pencil. They would keep their pencil on their paper, and at the 2, make a straight line down. So your 2, can I do that with this? In fact, I think I can put this on. I don't think I need this for a minute. Come on. There we go. So let me show you. I say put your pencil on the 2, round up to the dotted line. That's the 10, the 8, baseline, 4, 2, pull a straight line down. You can see it doesn't have that little, and some children are so used to making the little line up there to touch that sometimes they'll write it and then they'll want to add that because it just doesn't look right. But if you look at that and then you go on to cursive, isn't that how you do a cursive A? You start at the 2, go around and so there's no use, and they don't lift their pencil, it's one continuous motion. Now, for some children, that's going to be a little bit of a challenge because they're used to starting their circle at the bottom. Sometimes they go that way. Sometimes they do go that way. They're used to starting at the very top, going around. So watch that when your child's writing and say, oh, did you start at the 2 on your writing? And okay, let me tell you one thing right now as you're going. D's and B's, they get mixed up all the time, right? Okay, if you will watch the way your child is forming them, the likelihood of that will lessen. When I have a child reading and I can see they're getting them mixed up, I will give them a pencil and paper and say, okay, make a D for me. Okay, make a, well, I'll say do. Make a book for me. And chances are, they will start with a straight line down on both of them. And they make that straight line down, and then in their mind, they've got to go, now which way do I go? This way or this way? Which one is it? But if this way, okay, a D is a circle letter. It will start at the 2. It will go around, back, straight up, straight down to the baseline. So it starts with a circle. I always like to say, D. Look at my lips when I say that. D. What shape is it? Well, that means you start with the circle first. B. What shape are my lips? A line. So my B is going to start with a line down. So if they learn it that way, then D and B are different, just like A, Ah. They don't associate in the same way. Now they may look similar, but this is a start if you teach them that way. I mean, there's other little things like the bar, candy bar, or the donut, or the doorknob, the bat, and then the ball. You know, there's all those little tricks that people have taught about it. But one thing, if you will teach them or make sure they're writing them that way, then that gives you a step up in doing that. So, if you look at your paper, that first row is all clock letters. Even the F, it will start at the tall and go around and down with the horizontal line. Now you may look up at that top row and you see a U there, right? Well, we teach that with the Q because you never see the Q without the U. They're always together. In any word, they're always together. For my little kindergarten children, I always say, she's the queen, and she needs a bodyguard. So you've always got to remember to give her her bodyguard. So we'll write our Q starting at the 2. And then we have to do her bodyguard. Now the bodyguard starts at the dotted line, very, very close to the queen, because we don't want anybody to sneak in between them. So you put it very, very close to the queen, down, around, and up and down. Now, the bodyguard can get off shift and go home, and he can be all by himself. But the queen, she always has to have her bodyguard with her. So remind them when they're writing that, they will always write these two together. So let me go through. So then we'll do the line letters, and if you notice, by the time they get to H, they will just go in alphabetical order, the way they will be taught. You will notice, look at the Y. It's a little different. Most of the children come with the but we teach them this one. They go around, and probably the primary purpose of teaching them that is to, again, make the transition into a cursive writing easier. But we also, and you will notice, this isn't the way we're going to write our A-A-Ah, right? We're going to write it that way. But we teach them, this is book print. That means this is likely how you will see it when you see it in a book. So that they'll be aware that, you know, it'll look like that. The A-A-Ah looks like that. When we write it, it looks like that. But when we read it, a lot of times it'll look like that. Any other questions as you're looking through this stroke thing? Yes?
We've been teaching our daughter her letters and how to write and such, but it is not this way. Is that going to totally set her back since she's
No.
been writing a different way?
No.
to relearn.
Yeah, she will have to we'll ask her to relearn. And sometimes I address that saying, well, yeah, I can see you've learned it differently. I don't say, oh, you learned it the wrong way. Oh, we gotta teach your parents a thing or two. We will just say, we're going to write a different way. So this is how we're going to write. And then we'll teach them that way. And just ask them to do that. Yes?
We're kind of in the same boat with some of my kids, and my kids, I know you said at least good cursive, but my kids are already asking when I say that's not right. Why does it matter? Like, they just don't know why should I change it?
Well,
Like, what should I tell them?
okay, to teach them so that they, for cursive, to help with cursive, but also so they've got, the same procedure through it, so it's consistent. If you're always starting at the 2 there, you'll know that that's how you start at the 2. Because, yes,
Oh, you can finish. I have another question.
oh, okay. I guess just for consistency. And it makes their writing neater.
Well, I was just noticing on here, it says something like it will lead to dyslexia or perceptual handicaps.
Well, that would be kind of like this thing. The other thing is, when they're writing, and a lot of children just naturally start at the bottom and go up. So you'll want to teach them to go down. You always go
It's
down.
also because it helps them, like somebody said, flow better, like with their writing.
It does. There's consistency,
Myself got
flow.
argument with my kids.
Right, consistency, flow, and this is the way we do it at this school. I bet you can do it. Let's see. Don't be negative with them, but just challenge them. Can you change? I'll bet you can. See if you can change. And then they'll be delighted with their writing. Okay, trying to wage how much I want. Did you have a question? Yes.
Do you use any other form besides Spalding within the year span of the year, of the school year?
Any other form
Do
of
you
writing?
incorporate other reading besides Spalding?
Other reading?
Yeah. Like different programs just besides Spalding?
Yes, well, okay. Let me tell you this. Spalding is also a reading thing. It's not just, okay, we as a school believe in teaching the tools for decoding, which Spalding does. A lot of programs will teach just sight words. And I'm a prime example of what happens when we do that. I was taught to read through the Dick and Jane. I suppose I know I learned to read. I went to college.
It's a phonic-based program, right?
It is phonic-based, where a lot of the other programs aren't, or they mix them all up. Now, I'm not saying that we will just do Spalding. We will probably introduce like what we call predictable readers, where they're books that would have words. And the reason for that to begin with would be to make sure they understand the flow of reading. A predictable reader would be a book that would say, this is an apple. This is an orange. This
Yeah, no,
is,
those are good. Yeah, you gotta get the basics of it.
right. So we could do some books like that, just to teach them the flow.
So I guess my question would be, would you incorporate other phonetic or phonic-based, just like Spalding?
No.
Okay.
No, we will stick with Spalding. Because then programs get too watered down and mixed up. And Spalding is complete language program. So, and it's a thorough program. Let me go to, okay, so we go through the alphabet, teach them all how to do it. And each day we teach, like in kindergarten, we teach a new letter. In kindergarten, we teach the 1 to 26, and then we do the 2-letter ones to 54. 2-letter ones meaning this, sh. E. When they say 2 E's together, they know that says E. Ugh. So those would be the 2-letter ones. You go to 54 if you look in your cards. And then they go on to 1st grade, and then they learn to the end. And we say we master those in kindergarten, and then when they go to 1st grade, they go to the end, and then in 2nd grade, they should have the whole thing mastered.
So what do you do with kids that maybe are I mean, a lot of these kids are going to be learning something they probably haven't learned, since this is not the average thing that most places use to learn how to spell and write and all that. But if a child becomes more advanced, how do you work with them if they're in kindergarten but maybe they are on a 1st grade level? So what do you do with kids that become more advanced or are more advanced at being able to write or read? Do you keep them in kindergarten and just give them higher stuff to do, even though they're
Oh,
still
yes,
kindergarten?
yeah, we would keep them in kindergarten. But we
Just
do
kinda help them.
differentiate learning.
Okay.
Like we would divide into centers,
Yeah.
so we would take the higher ones.
To
When we
their own
really
level.
get intense in the books, they will be individualized to the student.
To what the
And,
level is.
yes, and they do like guided reading in groups in the 1st through, what we have been doing with the kindergarten is every day we would listen to them read their book. And then if they've got it down, then they get a new book the next day. And so they're on their own individual pace.
So they can kind of be on that.
Now, I have found that even, okay, this is what I have found in my experience. A lot of children come knowing how to read, but they are quick memorizers, and they have learned the sight words and things. But if you spewed out a bunch of nonsense words they had no association with, they might have a difficult time because they don't have these sounds really integrated in their mind.
They know how
And
to read what they've memorized, but they don't know how
Right.
to sound it out.
right, they don't know how to decode the words, and that's what we're looking for, to give them the tools to decode. And
So
they
they
can
can be
use
better
their
readers.
memories and everything anyway. And I have found in my experience that some children come in, you know, like I said, reading on a 3rd grade level and whatever, and it's just the developmental level of the child. And those that are way down here as far as their reading skills, they even out. By the time these children down here get to 3rd grade, the light bulb has come on, they have evened out. And yes,
So my kids did Challenger before this, and they have their own reading program or whatever. And they've already learned a lot of these sounds, but not really the same way I guess you would teach them. They're gonna have to probably unlearn.
no, they won't unlearn.
They're just a little different. Our kids have the same.
Okay.
We brought
Yeah.
our kids over here in 3rd grade. We were Challenger before that. It's just
Did they
a
have
little
any issues
different.
with like?
They had a few of the double letters that they struggled with, but it was a good, that's a good base. And then when they came here, they just built upon that base. And then when we were in 3rd grade, they had to pass them off. And so it took our kids a little bit longer to pass them off, but then they got a better base because the decoding system, it became better and
Because I
easier for them
noticed
to
like all
understand
our
more
rules,
nonsense.
like TI says sh, instead of TION says shun, like they teach challengers. I was just wondering if there's issues with kids, do they get frustrated? Or does it seem to be like a pretty?
No, I think they, like she said, they get in there. And if, I guess if you think your child, oh, they know it all, they're going to be so bored.
Well, the reason I asked is I have twins, and one was a huge struggle to learn. He's like, tooth and nail, and he did it. And so I'm just worried that he finally learned them and that's like, he's gonna get frustrated again. I'm worried about that.
He'll get it, he'll get it. It isn't that, and I've had students come from Challenger, and I haven't seen it's a real problem. The other thing too is here, and I don't know how Challenger works exactly, but we call what we call an every day, we will do an OPR, which is an oral practice, phonogram practice. And I will take the cards and I would say, okay, what is this? And then they would say ah, I, and we go through those very quickly, 20 of them. And then I say, take your paper out, pick up your pencil, and then I'll say, okay, write ah. And they have to write it. Write write z. And they have to be able to write it. And then you know they have really got those submitted. When they can write them down, and like she said, pass them off, but get, you know, 100%.
Say the sounds, and then they have to write the letter that goes with the sounds.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And then you know they have really got that inside, because, you know, it's a lot easier to, when you've got a busy, oh yeah, I remember that's, and.
You say all the sounds for that letter.
Mhm.
So, cause like, you know, like C sometimes says, so would it be like just the S sound, but,
No, it'd be s.
oh, okay.
But they'll pick it up. Yes.
Are you just in the same boat, so this is like mentioned, are you saying that if they went to, and they learned a new, digital way when they're coming into second or third grade, we as parents might need to do some catching up with them?
Probably use your cards, yes.
Because they're not gonna just get it by coming to school and.
Well, they will. I mean, it'll probably come a lot quicker to them, but they might have to refresh and learn maybe something new or different.
Because like in second and third, there's like that already know it, right?
They still practice it every day.
They do. Every day they will do and your children can, since they have that knowledge, they can go a lot faster. They will pick it up. Yeah, every day they do the oral phonogram and the written. But it'll just be involving, what, more phonograms? More diverse, not, they don't do a whole big thing every day. Does that make sense? They just do the 20 things. Yes?
If anybody, I just thought it might be helpful to share, because I kind of had some reservations about different systems. Every system has its own philosophy, and I kind of felt like, yeah, who cares? They'll figure it out, because I, you know, maybe because I did. But I was listening to Mrs. Peel, and she was telling me how her kids were really struggling in school, and how they were just being taught that, you know, that word doesn't make sense. It's spelled that way, and I know it just kind of doesn't make sense, so you just have to memorize it. And her kids were really struggling, and they were actually lower in the class. And she had learned Spalding, and as a teacher had recognized how thorough of a program it was. And so she felt like she knew better, and she couldn't in good conscience leave her kids at school. So she brought her kids home and homeschooled them, and she let them go to school for like a half day, she said. And when they would overlap a little bit of the reading, the teacher noticed that they were way, way, way further ahead from the other kids. I mean, like 2 grades. And the teacher came to her and asked, "What did you do with them when they came home with you?" And so she started teaching that teacher the Spalding method, and that teacher got excited and taught her whole next year. If I'm remembering the story correctly, you'll have to ask Mrs. Peel, but she taught her whole class the next year, and all of the students in the class were 2 grade levels above all the other kindergartners. And she said she was so excited about it, and unfortunately the parents of the kids in the other kindergarten classes came back with a petition against that teacher saying, you can't touch the system so that your kids are privileged and our kids are dumb. I mean, what they should have done
Right.
is made
Train them all.
made the program for
Right,
all of
right.
it, but they made her stop teaching Spalding. And so it was kind of an unfortunate story, but she shared that to show that it's had such good success, because she said when her little boy was in the class, she was teaching, they were spelling something like love, and one of the kids said, well, why is there an E on the end of the word? And the teacher said, oh, I don't know, it's just one of those words you have to memorize. And her little boy got up and went to the front of the class and said, I know why. And he said, because it's a rule, the English words don't end in D. And so, and the teacher went, oh my gosh, that's true. So it was something that really, it is very, very thorough. And when she kind of pointed that out to me and helped me realize that it is a little bit more sacrifice on my part, because now I'm taking out flashcards and going through with my kids even when they already know how to read pretty well. And it's been worth it, because they really are. My little girl was really struggling with spelling, and over the summer working with Mrs. Hill, she's just really done a lot better.
Right, because those rules, they do learn. I mean, think about it. Have you ever figured out why have, same rule, have has a E on the end? You know, we would think it was silent E would make it say have, so why does it say have? It's because English words do not end in B or U, and they will learn that. Let me give you a sample of a spelling word. It's the first one we learn in kindergarten is me. Now this is how I would teach me, because they know the sounds now, all right? I'm confident they know those. So I would say, today, boys and girls, we're going to learn the word me. What are we going to learn? Me. That's what, it's a back and forth. We want all our brain lit up. Remember, we're talking to me. What's the first sound you hear in me? Please write it. So you would write it. What's the next sound you hear in me? Use E. Now, first time through, I have to specify it's E, so that they don't write double E. So I say write E. Write it. Okay, now will you help me write it? Okay, what's the first sound we hear in me? See, can you see the back and forth thing? Next sound? Okay, you wouldn't say E. What sound do you hear? E. So that would be the only time I would say E, was just to help them write it. Okay, what's this word? Me. Only we would say E. That would be reading for spelling. E. And then we go back through and we do all our spelling words for that day and then say, let's read for spelling. E, whatever our words were, G, O. And then let's say, okay, let's read for reading. And then we would just go, me, the, go. So we read it both ways, so they get it both ways. Then I would say, I mean, that's after I get all of them up. But while I'm still on this word, I'd say, how would we mark this word? And we have learned, and you've got a page there with the marking. We have learned when a vowel says its name, we're going to underline it. And then we're going to say, why does it say E? And we have learned rule 4, which is vowels A, E, O, U usually say A, E, O, U at the end of a syllable. Me, one syllable word, it's the end. Paper, it says A because it's the end of a syllable. So when they're writing that down in their spelling book, they would do that. And then over here, they would write rule 4 to remind them that's what it is. And pretty soon they just learn that that's rule 4. Like she was saying, there's all these kind of rules that just make sense to the language, so that when they hear it, they do it. Yes?
Do you teach them the like short and long vowels so that they can learn like that?
No.
You don't do that?
No, it would be underline the vowels. We don't ever do the short. Now, for words that, let me think. This is a word that we use the second sound in something. Yes. Well, okay, no, like something that had a k, the C. We use the C. But we would use the second city. Okay. It. Oh, this is a good one. City. When we teach it for spelling, I am going to teach it city. I know that sounds silly. Baby. I had a hard time with this when I learned the program, but baby. I'm going to teach him baby. You know, city. That's silliness. But we have taught him that the Y says y, I, I. That's all it says. It doesn't say E. So we teach it I, so they know the E's out of the question. Otherwise, before we taught them that or did it that way, they'd put an E at the end. Oh, you know, why? But if you say sit I, then they know it's either got to be a I or a Y. And we have learned the rule that English words do not end in I, so I'm not going to use the I. So my only other choice would be to use that Y. Does that make sense to you?
So you actually, you pronounce it sit,
Sit. Sit
with
it.
an I at the end, because there's a rule that no English word can end in I, but the Y can.
Make the
I
is sound.
The is sound, yeah.
Right.
So it must be Y.
So it has to be Y. But it will say E, and then we just say when we read it for spelling, it would be s, it, I. But when we read it for reading, we would read city. I know that's kind of hard to, you're kind of going, oh.
So to eliminate Spanish.
That's the Spanish teacher.
Right.
I was gonna say, like, kids' minds are like sponges, that's why most people started this age, to teach them a second or even third language. And it's so much harder for us to grasp, because everything that we've learned is so set in stone that we're like,
What? I know, and it was hard for me. I thought, that is silly.
yeah.
That's just silliness
So
to say baby.
He'll come home.
But I never say
and this
big
makes
yet.
perfect sense.
Yeah, but it makes sense to those. It makes sense if they're just learning how to spell that. Promise. So don't laugh at them because it makes sense to them. And they will spell it right.
I still tell my kids, Pluto is a planet. It was when I was in your grade, and it still is.
Right. And oh my goodness, talk about the European countries over there. I mean, I don't know the names of all
Or
those.
how much doing the research on that,
Right,
how much
right.
that's changed.
Right. So does that make sense? But I would also, since that says it's second sound, I would put a little 2 above it. Now, when they're having a spelling test, if they don't put all these underlines and things, but they spelled the word correctly, they would get it correct. But in their spelling book, when we are learning, we would put the 2 because that reminds them. Yes?
So when a word ends in a Y, it has like a double consonant, is there a different rule for that? Like puppy and happy and stuff like that? Or is it still, would you say half bit and pup bit? Oh my.
I
I
know.
don't want to add an E sound in the
know.
Y. That would be
Need a new
easier.
rule.
Okay, no, actually, do you know what? Riggs, the program that came off of Spalding, they did that.
Oh.
But then again, then it got real confusing and I had the upper grade teachers who had more of these double syllable words and things. They saw a big difference when they did the is sound and dropped that E. Because then they're still wondering, do I put an E on the end or a Y?
So say puppy.
Pup bit. Pup bit.
So we just all have an accent.
For your spelling, when you read it for spelling.
Where are you from, Spalding?
When you say
Spalding.
My kid's in kindergarten.
you say pup bit, or you're telling them to spell?
When I'm telling them to spell, I'll say pup bit. But when they're reading it, we'll say, well, we read it puppy.
So this teaches them to not just spell, but to spell and read.
Right, that's why we do it both ways. so that they aren't going around and
The
saying,
thing that's
"Pup it."
blowing my mind right now is I also homeschool some of my kids, and so, but they're not doing the Spalding, so I feel like I have to learn 2 different languages in like a week and
Well,
a half.
like she said, like this is integrating some of these things you
I
learn.
know.
You've got rule sheets right there that will help you.
So,
Yes.
so how do you do the, cause in the program they're in now at their preschool, learning dynamics, it's a sight word. So, and they've asked me and I don't even know how to answer, I'm like, you just have to memorize it.
Okay, this is the way I would explain it. Okay, we're spelling.
The is instead of. see what I'm
No,
saying?
we would say we're learning the word the, but
Oh.
sometimes we say the, because our language has gotten lazy. And that is the bottom line. Our language has gotten
So it's always
lazy.
been the until the last 100 years.
Right, and there, you will find a lot of uhs, especially in unaccented words. And so you'd say it's the, but well, it's the word is the, but we have to think to spell the. And we would also underline it. So we would go, this is a good one too, because it isn't, the sounds for this is, so second sound. So I'm going to put the 2 there to remind me that it's not the breath, but it's the voiced. And then I'm going to write my E, and I'm going to underline it, because it says E. And I'm also going to write my rule 4 over there. But again, when I do it for reading, I would say the.
Kindergartners are able to do this.
They are.
Everyone.
Aren't they, Mrs. Dunn? This is my aide, Mrs. Dunn. It's amazing. They do it. And it's like matter of fact.
Well, Challenger does a lot of intense things, but they don't have to write the rule every time they spell, and it's pretty awesome.
Well, and like I said, for a spelling test, they would not do that. They would not. This is their spelling book.
So
when
we
we have
don't
written.
train them this, train them, wow, I need help. We don't teach them this?
No, that is just for your reference.
Oh,
So when they
don't
come
have to
home
know
and you
that.
look in their spelling book and
Okay.
you see a rule 4, you go, what's that? Oh. Or another thing is you can get your sheet out, and this is a good way to check your child. Say, well, how would you mark that word? And if they say, well, I don't know, say, well, you better pay a little better attention. Or you'd say, let's see, no, you wouldn't say that. You would say, let's see if we can figure it out. And we would also, sorry, I'm getting forgetful, would underline the 2-letter phonographs. Meaning they make one sound when they're together. They don't make their individual sounds. You'd say, well, why is that 2 there? And they should be able to say, because it says it's second sound. Why did you underline it? Because it says E. Why does it say E? And they really should, I mean, they don't have to say rule 4, but they really should say, because vowels A, E, O, U usually say A, E, O, U at the end of the syllable. And promise, kindergartens, when we go over it enough and enough, all I have to say is why, and they're spilling it out. So that's a good way that you can check to see if they are really getting it, if they can tell you back again. So this is your cheat sheet to, and also on the back of your card, you'll notice you have cheat things too, because you have keywords that will help you with the sounds. But you don't ever want to use those keywords with your child in teaching. Okay. We are past time. Can I just go through one more PowerPoint just to show you that, and you will get this much, much better as the year goes on. And, but I would say with kindergarten, especially half-day kindergarten, you're going to be asked to help a lot with homework. Because the poor kindergarten teacher doesn't have time to get it all in the half a day. The advantage of the thing with full day is we will do your homework for you while you're here.
Do kindergartners, are full day kindergartners?
Not. That's why when we were discussing this full day, and I says, if I'm going to keep your child full day, then I will do the homework with them, so that you can have your child when they come home. You will have to read with them, you have to do the reading. I can't, well, we will do some reading, but I can't replace all that. But full day will not have. Now, the other grades, they might have homework. I'm not promising what they're, but a lot of people have said kindergarten's the most intense because they're learning all these things. So, kindergarten parents, if you're doing homework, it isn't just, sit down, honey, do your homework. You will want to sit down with them and help them, okay, sound out. E when you're writing it. E when you're writing it. Not just copy. Because that isn't going to be beneficial for them. Yes?
How long will it
It shouldn't take more than 15 minutes.
be? 15 minutes.
15 minutes. Now, I have had, well, plus your reading.
Yes.
The writing is only 15 minutes.
35.
And and a lot of parents come back and say, oh, it takes me forever, half hour, and I'm going, you gotta tell them, no, it's not gonna, you can't let your child buffalo you. You've gotta say, no, honey, this is the way it goes. Sit down. Okay. Tell me how you spell me. E. Okay, let's write it again. E. If they had a list of them to practice, I would go down and then down and down so that they're mixing it up in their mind. That's how long, how long is it gonna take them to write it 3 times? And they aren't going to have a parcel of things to do, probably 3 words to do.
But if they're in full day, we just have to feed them dinner and read to them.
Your second job to figure the other out.
Yeah, more or less, unless full day teachers can see that your child just needs a little more boost.
Oh, I'm gonna have to bring her brownies.
Okay, so let me do one more PowerPoint to just show you how this Spalding program isn't all about just this. It isn't all about spelling and reading. I've got to go to my other PowerPoint. Come on. Okay. Few children learn to love books by themselves. Someone has to lure them into the wonderful world of the written word. Someone has to show them the way. Oh, I do this all the time with my students. I'm up here just reading. And they're going, we can't see it, teacher. Thank you, Mrs. Dunn. Okay, Spalding has 3 strands to reading. Literary appreciation, precise language. So, in kindergarten, we would, and in the others, it's just, if you just think elevated. So I'm talking about the basics, but you just think elevated. But they still go through these things, literature, literary appreciation. So precise language. So I would read a book to them, and then we would go through the book again. We never do it, interrupting the story. They go through it, just plain through the book once. And then we say, then I'd read a page and say, could you find some precise language? Precise language means it would be a word that was vivid or really describes. So that would be your adjectives and your adverbs and things. And then when we get into writing, oh, could you put some precise language in that sentence? Okay, emotional appeal. Language in 6th And situations evoke sentiments. So as they're reading, say, did that story make you happy? Did it make you sad? So that they can get what reading's all about, that it does evoke emotions in you. The content, this is more for information. Ah, did that story teach you things? That information you didn't know before about that? And insight into people. Fairy tales are great for that. You know, you can learn a lot of things discerning right from wrong from fairy tales. You know, the Wicked Witch, the Cinderella, the other things. We can teach many lessons through that. And the consequences. Peter Rabbit. Did Peter Rabbit obey? And this is what happened. And then your universality. That, you know, how is that like in our country, in their country? We take some fairy tales like Cinderella and read the traditional one, a Korean Cinderella, or some other country's Cinderella, and say, you know, these stories were passed down verbally, and they kind of have the same plot. What can you see the same about it? Oh, what do you think is different according to their nationality? Text structure. Okay, then we teach child as they're reading, what kind of book is this? It's a narrative. The reason we have narratives isn't on here, is to entertain you. A narrative is what we call a fiction book. They have characters, plots, settings, and a point of view. So we would read through that and then we'd ask, what's the setting in the story? So we're teaching comprehension. This isn't just reading words. We're reading to find information out. I'm going to go through this quickly. Then after we've done narratives and had them pick out the characters, setting and everything, then we will introduce informatives, which are informational books. What was this about? What information did you learn? And as they go on, then the children have to start writing about the story. What was the topic sentence? What information did they learn? And then there's books that combine. They're both informative, they give you information, but they're also narratives. They're also make-believe books. Comprehension. Teachers make it visible by thinking aloud as they're reading. I have a granddaughter right now that she can read like the wind, but if you ask her what it's about, and so a child can fluently read, but they haven't comprehended what they're reading. So you teach them to think as they're reading. Oh, I read this part. My mind was thinking and da-da-da-da. So you verbally go through it to teach a child how they do analyze what they're reading. And then monitoring their comprehension. As they're reading, they're going through going, were there any words on that page that I did not know? Instead of just skipping over the words, they're asking themselves, were there words I did not know that maybe I should check out? And you can see when they get in advanced reading, if they're in the habit of doing that, what an advantage that would be, that they are analyzing, saying, I think I better look that word up. And making connections. Making connections is, to begin with, is you're making a connection. Okay, I don't know what that word is, but let me read the rest of the sentence. Can I figure it out by reading the rest of the sentence? And then it goes on to making connections with things in your life and knowledge that you know. Making predictions. The beginning prediction thing in kindergarten would be, we want to know, is this a narrative, an informative, or an informative narrative? Can you pick that out? And then as they advance into the other grades, they will be predicting what's going to happen. What can I infer from that? and reformatting, and this is important for them to be able to not just read the thing, but say, okay, this is what I learned, and I can make a list of the things I learned. They're not just, retelling you the whole thing. They're picking out the important parts and then mentally summarizing. They're looking and finding the main idea. What was the main idea of that whole thing? Why, what? And this is important when they're learning to compose and write too. They need to find their topic sentence. So you can see how it advances as the grades go on. Same principles, same things they're teaching, but it just develops as they're going up in the grades. So, that's the end.